All right, welcome back to the shop. So I've got this M1163 here in the shop. Going through it, fixing up a lot of issues this thing had. And one thing, this vehicle saw some salt water. And it's not real bad. The body's not rusted out. The frame's not rusted out. But one thing that did take a toll on it was the electronics, or the electrical, well, in electronics. Underneath the batteries here, the batteries. And then underneath is where the control manifold and relays are for the air suspension. It also has all the self-resetting breakers for the battery system. It's all underneath there. And unfortunately, it got salt water in there, and it destroyed the self-resetting breakers, and we had some other issues, some other stuff we had to clean up in there. And so I've got all that done. That stuff's all finished up. The vehicle's almost done, ready to go. So this vehicle had two systems that weren't working correctly. After changing the airbags, after doing the CV boots, doing all the stuff I normally do, all the mechanical stuff to it, then it came time to test out the air suspension controls and the CTIS system. So I hooked my shop air up to it. I have this hose setup that I made to be able to connect my shop air to the system. This is the hose coming from the compressor going to the air dryer. That way I don't have to have the truck running. I don't have to run the compressor. I can just have my shop air running all that. I just turn the key on and I can test the systems out. I wanted to set the suspension, so I set the suspension with the toggle switches, got it where I wanted it. I held the two buttons in. There's two buttons you hold in for about 5 to 10 seconds to set the height for each predetermined height setting. And then I tested. So I pushed the button in to go to that height, and the truck would just, the right side lifted all the way up, the left side lifted all the way down. Then I tried setting it again, and then the front came all the way up and the rear came all the way down. It was doing all this weird stuff that it shouldn't have been doing. And but it worked with the toggle switches, which is, seemed odd, right? So that everything was working here. So I checked the sensors. So there's sensors on each wheel right here that connects to the anti-sway bar, and this tells the module that controls the air ride system where it is, right? So that's how it knows how to set it. Automatically go to the predetermined ride height. All that stuff looks good. I checked all the mechanical stuff. Everything was looking good. So the next thing I had to looked at to see what's going on, I had to open the dash back up, and right there in that module, the plastic module, that's the controller for the air ride suspension. So I pulled that out, and let me show you what I found in there. This is the PC board out of it. This elastic that's going around these capacitors and this other stuff, you can tell it's just melted down. I'll post a picture right here of this old one, and then the new one, the replacement one. You can see the difference in this elastic. So something got really hot in here. Something melted down in here. So I changed that controller, and that fixed the system. So now the air ride system works good. Then my next thing, I was testing the CTIS system, and the left rear tire was losing air. So the first thing I did, I checked the wheel valve here to make sure that it wasn't leaking here, because sometimes these will leak at this joint here, or whatever, so I tested that, made sure that wasn't the problem. You come back in here and I checked the hubs to make sure air wasn't leaking out of the hub. I have some spray stuff that I spray on there called Big Blue. It's kind of like putting soapy water on, but it's a little better than that. And it wasn't leaking at all. So I traced the lines down. I made sure that nothing was leaking here. I even took and capped this hose off just to make sure that it wasn't something leaking in here that I just couldn't hear. And looking at the controller on the dash, it'll show you faults if something's wrong. So looking right here, it showed CF, which means constant flow. That could come on if you have an air leak. That comes on if you have a hole in your tire and it's trying to maintain pressure in that. It'll show a fault code of constant flow. So it showed that, but then it would flash onto CF2, and that must be a fault code. Some fault code. I didn't look it up. I didn't look to see what the fault codes mean on this. And at the time that it would show the CF2 fault, then I would hear the exhaust come out of the CTIS system. If you're familiar with these, whenever you're running the CTIS, say you change the pressure you want it at, or you do a pressure test on it, you'll hear it checking each wheel, and then you'll hear it exhaust some. And what I got, when I got that fault code, I got a constant exhausting sound. Now here's the valve out of it. This is the CTIS manifold. This is kind of what it looks like in the frame. You've got this air muffler on there. And I heard air just, so air was just coming out of this air muffler here. So I pulled the valve off. This is the valve that came off of it. I took it all apart. I pulled the bottom of the manifold off here. Reach up inside here. I took this plate off. If you reach up in here, you can feel there's a diaphragm up in there. Right now, I'm pushing on it with my finger, and all that was good. It was clean. There wasn't any problem with the system. So I pulled the cover off here. It's got a cover on the side, and this is the PC board out of it, the controller. And if you look at it right there, you can see what I believe is a MOSFET melted down. And a MOSFET's a power controller, and it melted down and it kind of melted into this plastic plug connector here. So that fried out, and that's what was causing my problem here. So I was able to buy a used unit from a friend of mine, and I haven't installed it yet. I still have to install it, but I'm sure it's going to fix the problem. So it's kind of odd to have two electronic controllers go bad at the same time. I mean, you could see one going bad for whatever reason, right, from some type of failure, but this had two at the same time. And I believe what the problem was, all the electrical that got destroyed by the salt water, somehow it must have sent too much voltage to the controllers or something like that, because these trucks run a 12-volt system and a 24-volt system. If you look at the batteries, you'll see you got two batteries running parallel, or I'm sorry, running series to make 24 volts. Actually, I got to put some corrosion stuff on here. But then you have this power wire coming off one single battery. This is your chassis ground. This is your, where you get 24 volts off of the positive on this one. But this right here goes to, this is just takes 12 volt off this battery here. And that runs some of the controls. Some of the controls are controlled by 12 volts. There's 12 volt relays on the relay panel down there. The power, like the cigarette lighter that you use for charging your phone or whatever, that's 12 volt. And I haven't looked to see if the CTIS or the air ride are 12 volt. I think the air ride's gonna be 12 volt because it's kind of a standard thing that they sell for regular cars. People that put a air ride system on their car, like low riders or whatever. Systems made by Ride Tech. So I think that it must have gotten either somehow with all that shorting out, it either sent 24 volt to these controllers somehow and cooked them, or just some really dirty voltage where like way too low a voltage, because sometimes even too low a voltage is going to screw things up too. That can burn out components. So I don't know. It's one of those. I'm confident now that I have it all fixed up in here because we've changed those breakers. We've cleaned all that mess up in there from the salt water. So with the new controller for the air ride system, that works now. And as soon as I get the manifold and the controller in for the CTIS, then I'll know. So when you do have a problem like this that you can't find, or you get strange things happening, or anything not working, basically, first thing you want to do is you start at the mechanical stuff. You start at the end of it. Like with the CTIS, I started at the wheels, looked for leaks at the wheels. Then I worked my way, to the hoses, the hubs, and then the hoses, and worked my way up to the manifold. And then that's where I found the problem was in the manifold. And then with the air ride system, I started at, I knew the airbags were good. I didn't have the thing running, right? I had my shop air hooked to it, so I could tell there was no air leaks. So there was nothing screwing the system up like that. And then I checked all those sensors for the wheels. I went there, the mechanical stuff first. That stuff was all intact. I looked over the wiring, and as much of the wiring as I could see, without taking this thing apart. That all looked good. So then it went back to the controller, and I checked that, and it was the PC board and the controller. These should be kind of rare things to go bad on these. Of all the growlers I've worked on, this is the first one I've had these issues with. So hopefully it was just caused by, the issue we had with the salt water going in the electronics, or in the electrical part of it, and then that cooked out the electronics. So anyways, I hope this helps you guys. If any of you guys are having weird problems like this, maybe this will help you out. This will give you some clues to look for on yours. And I just want to thank you for watching, and please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And hit that notification bell. That way when new videos like this pop up, you'll get notified and you won't miss anything. Anyways, thank you and have a good day.